Welcome everyone to today's webinar. The title is Keys to Successful Nonprofit Executive Leadership Recruitment, the 5 key stages of the executive search process. I am Dr. Yvonne Stiles. I'm a colleague of Dennis Miller's. I work at DCM, but I want to introduce you to Dennis. Dennis is a nationally recognized strategic leadership coach and executive search consultant with more than 35 years of experience working with the nonprofit board leadership and chief executives across the country. Dennis is also an expert in board governance, leadership development, philanthropy, and succession planning. In addition, he is a successful author, sought-after motivational speaker, retreat facilitator, and leadership performance coach. Dennis's experience working with hundreds of nonprofit organizations has provided him with the knowledge and insights to understand the competencies required of today's nonprofit leadership. And below you see all the many publications that Dennis has written. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand it over to the principal of DCM, Mr. Dennis Miller. Dennis?
Thank you, Yvonne. I appreciate that. Hello, everybody. I'm going to spend time talking about the executive search process. It's been estimated that probably in the next 5 to 7 years, 50% or more of nonprofit executives or CEOs will be retiring. And so there's going to be the need for a massive amount of recruiting for new leaders. And so I want to present to you today the stages of an executive search process. Whether you decide to use a search firm or whether you decide to try to do it on your own, I'm going to show you some of the pros and cons of that. And I'm going to be taking your questions as well a little bit later. Also, everybody that registered will be getting a copy of both the PowerPoint and the recording. But I'll go back to this. Everybody will be able to download a free copy of my book called The Guide to Recruiting Your Next CEO, the Executive Search Handbook for Nonprofit Boards, down here. And we'll be sending that to you as well here. Okay, let's get going here. There are 5 stages for us in an executive search process. The first stage is that it's very important to be able to identify what are the strategic challenges that your organization is facing today, and what are the competencies that the new person will need to have in order to successfully address them. One of the things you'll want to do is, prior to recruiting someone, is not just post a job and take the prior job description and put it out there, because things change. Whether the person that is replacing has been there for 5 years or 10 years, challenges are different today, competencies are different today. So it's really, really important to have a process that where there's discussion, understanding the challenges you are facing, and what the competencies are. I'm going to show you in a few minutes forward what an ideal candidate profile looks like. So we're going to talk about that. That's the first stage. Second stage you're going to hear about from us today is about how to conduct an extensive outreach to organizations and professional trade associations to identify the people that have those competencies and skills and personal attributes you're seeking. The search process to be successful is really involved in this outreach. Putting it in the paper is over the hill. Posting just on social media, posting on your website, hoping that people apply to your organization is not really that, is not going to be that successful for you. On average, about 80% of the candidates that we refer to a client were not actively seeking a position. So just hoping that someone can apply as a job is not it. So we're going to talk about how to go about doing that, and if you have the ability, the resources, and time to do that. The third stage, obviously, is you're going to want to, test their opportunity and about this opportunity and persuade them to consider having a conversation with you about the opportunity and sell them on that. And then obviously, after you've done an extensive amount of interviews, you want to obviously, whether it's to yourself as an organization, or firms like us recommend various candidates to you based upon that extensive outreach. And generally speaking, we and others will include a personality leadership assessment tool to measure how people are wired, their traits, their DNA, to make sure they best match that ideal profile. And then obviously you want to complete the search by not only doing a final reference check, educational, academic background, you want to verify their employment, verify any credentials they've had, but you obviously need to do an extensive reference check on how other people that they've worked with or worked for, work with them, have felt about them. And clearly your organization is going to want to do things like a criminal background check and things like that. It's also important before they start a position, an onboarding process. It's not sufficient anymore just to give someone the keys to the office and tell them where they can get lunch or the bathrooms are. It's really important that they come on to the team with a good understanding of the key challenges they're facing today. What is the number one thing on their plate that you want them to get done immediately? Who are the 5 or 10 people in the first week or two that they need to get to know, that you want to introduce them to? Not only people in your organization, but people in your community, people on the board, various business and civic leaders and things like that. You want to make sure that they're introduced properly to people here. So that's an overview of the stage that we're going to talk about today. Now, a decision for everybody to make. The first decision for everybody to make is, do you do it yourself or do you hire a firm? That's your decision. The biggest decision to make, though, is this. Do you have the time and the resources, either from volunteers on your board or from your own organization, to do the candidate outreach? That is the biggest challenge that people have. Oftentimes they say they will, but they don't. Now, some of you today may be hoping to be candidates in a search. Some of you may be wanting to be hiring someone or recruiting somebody. So it depends what stage you are. But the first decision is, do you do it yourself? And the most important thing that I convey here, it takes a lot of time and energy to do outreach. That's the biggest thing among others that you're going to get from a search firm, is they do the outreach for you. It's also, I said, it's more of an active approach than a passive approach. You're not just going to put an ad out there on your website on social media and hoping people apply for it. It's not a really good route to recruit really high quality candidates. It's okay to recruit candidates, but not necessarily high quality candidates. You're going to have to make that decision for yourself. Do you have the time and energy and resources to do the candidate outreach? You certainly have people to do the interviewing. You certainly have people that can create the ideal profile for you, but do you have the ability and the time and energy of the outreaches for you? Okay. Second thing you want to do in getting prepared to do an outreach is you're going to want to determine, I don't think you need to do a whole strategic plan, but I think you clearly want to have a defining of your strategic vision. Whether it's a CEO search or COO search or CFO or Chief Development Officer search, you want to have a good sense of what are the strategic challenges that your organization is facing, so you know the competencies you want. And then when you are going to begin, outreach here, you want to have some interview questions. So we ask our clients, and other firms will ask clients about things like, what is the biggest strategic challenge that you're going to be facing with the new person? What are the internal obstacles? What are the executive competencies you're seeking? I'm going to go over what they are here. Competencies that and skills and attributes that were very important 5 or 10 years ago may still be important, about being mission driven, being a grant writer, community relations person, a builder of relationships, program people. But the question we come today is that there's a whole new set of competencies, and this is why you want to spend time with yourselves as an organization or a search firm, getting to know you, so you know exactly the challenges you're facing and what those competencies are. Today's competencies, as I said, are Mission driven is very important. I would never hire anybody that wasn't passionate about my mission, or could learn to become passionate about my mission. But today, what boards are seeking, that we're experiencing nationally, is they're looking for people that are visionary thinkers, not just people that can just do the job, but who can think about the organization and what its potential is. And that's very significant these days. Prior, years ago, boards would say, I will set the vision and I need someone to implement it. Today, that's not true anymore. People are looking for someone to come on in here to the organization and help us determine where we should go. And that's a very important job. Another competency is a high level of emotional intelligence. This is probably crucial. Be able to respond appropriately to people with emotion, empathy, compassion, caring, listening, to make people feel heard. No one that I know of, nobody is successful in any form of leadership that doesn't make people feel cared for, listened to, heard and respected and trusted. That's really important here. And today, relationship building, particularly at the CEO level, what you're looking for, someone who can build relationships both inside and outside your organization. Those are crucial skills. If you're seeking to be a candidate, that's a very important thing for you to develop, is the ability to build trusting, respected relationships. And you do that when you earn people's trust and respect. You don't demand it, and you consistently make decisions that are in the best interest of your organization. So you establish your credibility that someone is not about yourself, it's about your organization. Oftentimes, the search world, we're looking at CEO, executive director searches. Sometimes they use the word chief external officer, chief entrepreneurial officer. Today, it's not just about, looking for public money and how much money is coming in from grants and things like that. Government grants, both at the state level and at the national level, regional level, are diminished because of budget deficits. So you got to be one who can seek people to invest in your organization, can seek in building a brand around you and supporting your programs. Another competency is very important that you should think about is being a positive brand builder. Most of us who went into the nonprofit sector were very, myself too, were caring, mission driven, and it's important. But today, more than ever before, you need to be able to be a good communicator in building your brand. You need to be able to communicate the impact you're having, communicate the achievements you're having. You got to be able to tout your horn and tell your story. If you don't tell it, who else is going to? So you got to be a brand builder. Also, you want to be a collaborator. The idea of just doing it alone, we don't need anybody else, we'll do this by ourselves, we don't collaborate with people. That's not what funders are seeking. I remember a chairman of a bank who had a major conference every year in nonprofits said to me, Dennis, how come, these people in the audience, they're not collaborating? I get 8 kids with cancer programs submitting grant applications. How are they collaborating? It's true. People see collaboration, and I can document a lot, but who can collaborate with others to enhance your mission and have a better social impact? And of course, the competency today is, tough as it is, you need to be an inspirational motivator for your staff and everything. So those are kind of the competencies you have here. So when you have all that information and you decide what it is, then you can prepare what we call the ideal candidate profile. These are just a sample or two of a previous search that we did, but what you want to do in an ideal profile is, this happens to be LifePath, a great organization in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania area that deals with wonderful people that need help with intellectual development, physical disabilities. You want to profile the organization first. You want to use some wonderful pictures of this, showing who you are, your mission, maybe a linkage to your strategic plan, to your website. You really want to highlight your own organization first. Then you'll describe the role and responsibility of the position. This happens to be a CEO and responsibilities. And clearly you want to identify, it's one thing to say the responsibilities, another thing to talk about the ideal qualifications and experience here. And this is always rapidly changing. You can see here, there certainly was a commitment to the mission, but it's obviously a track record of relationship building, strong relation with boards. So there's a whole range of stuff. So this is an example of an ideal profile that, whether you're using a search firm or not, you want to use this as a tool as a document to give to prospective candidates because you want to sell them on your organization first. Here's just another example of an organization, a profile, same thing. This happens to be an Able Inc. It's in Princeton, New Jersey. For COO, they do fabulous work. Again, in the world of intellectual development disabilities, it highlights, some pictures of the people here, the service they offer, and obviously, things like that. So that's stage one. That's stage one for you to consider doing this process, is identifying your challenges, identifying the copies you need to address those challenges, and then get approval for an ideal profile. That's it. In our case, obviously, we send it out to 20,000 people on LinkedIn and to our email system as just a flare, but it's just a tool that you want to use to begin announcing the search here. Stage two is the outreach. This is where the rubber hits the road, as they say. How should you and how one should be successful in doing outreach? Again, you want to be talking to key sector leaders in the business. If you are a behavioral health organization or addiction agency or children family services, if it's nationally, you want to talk to national leaders, statewide, regional, countywide. Who are the people you want to talk to? And you want to ask them, who do you think would be a really good candidate, a qualified candidate? Not about who's interested. You want to know who would be a candidate. You want to be talking to various trade associations and business and professional trade associations because leaders belong to them. So that's very important here, to have a conversation with trade associations because they're going to have member organizations, and those member organizations are going to have websites, and on the websites they're going to list their leadership team. That's going to help you identify potential candidates, and you can find a way to reach out to them either through calling them at your office or tools that we have and others have to identify, obviously, email addresses and phone numbers, things like that here. Similar type organizations. So you really need to be, if you're in the, again, behavioral healthcare world, the children family services world, or social impact organization, food insecurities, you want to be reaching out to people, similar organizations, about who may be number two that ready to be number one, or who's the number three to ready to be number two, etc. Clearly, the use of social media is very important today, absolutely. But you can't just rely upon social media and just can't rely posting things, but you do want to post it on, particularly opportunities on LinkedIn, things like that. My experience and our experience as a team, job sites like Indeed and stuff is not where you're going to get executive candidates from. I mean, that might be for middle-level staff jobs, which is important. I'm sure they do a good job, but not at executive level and posting jobs like that. That's not really going to work here. LinkedIn is probably where you want to post things here. But here's, again, the same thing here is when you're asking people in stage two outreach, who is, who would be an ideal candidate, not who's interested. I oftentimes get, well, Dennis, thanks for reaching out to me. I'm not sure who would be interested. I'm not interested who's interested. You shouldn't be interested. You want to let someone know about the opportunity and have them think about the opportunity and then talk about the opportunity about, hey, it's confidential. Now, one of the reasons why a lot of people don't respond to just posting a job and responding to apply because of confidentiality. They're afraid that you're going to be, that you're not going to be able to keep it, keep it quiet. So that's important here. So that's stage two outreach. And candidate screening, you're going to want to certainly get there a cover letter and see how well they write. And a cover letter should include things about themselves that may not be evident from their resume and their resume. And there are two types, right? There's the chronological that shows you in 2002 I worked here, in 2010 I worked here, in 2018 I worked here, in 2022 I worked here. And there's a functional aspect of resume, things you've done here. So you're looking for both. You're looking at work history. You're looking for track record of success if they've moved up in an organization, and you're looking for both qualitative initiatives, but certainly quantitative initiatives. They can quantify their achievements and their impact here. You got to interview them, and the best way to determine about someone is a satisfactory candidate is through the interview process. And you want to be asking open-ended questions, not yes or no questions. You want to engage them in the process here. You want them to ask you questions here. but that's a process that you want to be doing. We do highly recommend that you do some form of assessment tool to measure personality leadership traits to see how they're wired. Is really important. There's references here, and that's part of the screening process here. That's kind of how that works here. Okay. Now, when you are going to be conducting interviews of candidates, and we have our own interview matrix guide that we help people with. Something you want to think about is you want to be asking a series of questions, and at least these key areas. Their leadership experience, what experience they have as leaders. Now, there's very few people born leader. There's someone have maybe DNA, maybe. But most people are made leaders. I know I wasn't born as a leader, and most of my colleagues know that. And they weren't born either. They made a choice to become leader. And so you want to ask questions about the leadership experience. You want to ask them about being an innovator and strategic thinker. Give me an example of what you've done strategically. And it's a real question is give me an example of where you failed and how you learned from it. We have this thing in our culture at times that we should avoid failure at all costs, and I don't think so. I think the only way that I know that I have learned is from failure, making mistakes. I'm sure my friends and colleagues will point them out to me at times with my wife, but so that's important. Interpersonal relationships, you want to ask them, you clearly want to ask them about how do they relate to people? How do they build trust and respect? You want to be adding things like that here. That's really important, is about get a sense of who they are, because no matter how good you are at any level, you will never achieve anything by yourself. You only will achieve things by the ability to work with others and get other people to do things as well. It's vitally important. If you're not and I've seen it, we all have, right? The person in the job that's just not a relationship builder and they're in their office or whatever. You've got to be a relationship builder in this world here today. How well you work with a board, how well you work with the volunteers. It's vitally important to understand board governance and how to work with them, what they're expecting and things like that here. That's crucial. You want to be learning things about, what's your experience with boards. If there's a CEO search, how well have you done it? If it's not. So it's how have you governed with boards? How have you worked with boards? What do you expect from the board? You want to be asking candidates, and I'd be asking you about your communication style. How do you communicate well? How do you tell your story here? And certainly the most important thing is cultural fit. So in stage 3 here, you want to be asking these people questions here. And even in stage 4, you want to be asking your candidates a range of questions here. You can create your own questions clearly, but not yes or no, engaging questions, and make sure there's some follow-up here. That's a little bit about that. Okay. One of the tools that we happen to use is the Telestra MX assessment. We're partnered with a firm called Telexis, which is excellent in leadership and evaluations and tools like that. But I'm going to just show you a couple of here. This is just Sarah's sample on make-believe name, and again, you'll get this report. It may not be so clear to you here, but it's really measuring. Each job has a different success factor. So a CEO in a nonprofit or CFO in a nonprofit is going to be different than a sales manager at a wholesale store or a Walmart, things like that. But you're going to get eventually some type of an assessment to see how they align their reasoning ability, their sense of urgency, their take charge, people contact, and their attitude. How do they measure against the norm? You don't want to be someone who's way high or way low. We did have recently a client that said, well, how come you're sending us some people with scores of 5? Because 5s are good. You don't want someone who's way on the right side or left side. So an example here, you could be someone that says, great, they have a high sense of urgency, but they could also lack focus on precision and accuracy. So it's important to use some tool in your hiring engagement process. We happen to think this is a wonderful tool, and it's more than reasonable to use here. But this is a sample of a tool that we use here. Okay. There's also in the tool we have on each question here is that it'll say here on the take charge has a high score of 8. It says Sarah may be, reluctant to follow the direction of others as she prefers, to act as a leader. That's a high score, but that isn't necessarily a good sign. Sarah has a strong need to be the leader in most situations and may be forced with others. Well, that's not a good thing. So high scores and low scores are not preferred. Okay, but they also can help you in your interviewing. You see this ahead of time. You have say, can you tell me about a time, Sarah, when you had to kind of make a decision, even though it may not be a popular decision? That's a good situation to make there. Okay, and so those are type of things here. This is some examples here along the way here. Now, I want to describe a little bit here of the, let's see, I got a chat here. Let's see here, no problem. So a couple of things you want to focus on here in terms of the role. I'll go back, I'm sorry here. The role of the search committee. Now, search committee is whether if you're recruiting for a CEO, you're going to have a search committee made of members of the board, most likely. Or if you're recruiting for someone on the executive team, you're going to have other members of the executive team, maybe some board members involved in it here. Size and composition, I'd say if you have a board of 12, 14, you want a search committee, maybe you're 5, ballpark. Not more than 7, not that many people, but not too few. You want someone who's chairing it. Could be your board chair could chair it. Could be someone else who's experienced with recruiting. You could also have someone on your search committee that's not on your board. If they're experienced in HR and hiring, that's very possible. I do caution you, though, to realize that you want to have someone that knows your organization well, that's forward thinking. I get asked a lot, how about a former board chair? It's fine if they are in line with where you're going today, but not in line with where you were yesterday here. Again, you want to, the role of the chair of the committee is going to be communicating to other members of the committee. Time frame, search committee is going to be involved as you get to stage 3 and 4 of interviewing candidates. Typical search generally takes 90 to 120 days for an executive on average. It's important that you keep things confidential. It's really very important that you can keep things confidential. So people are putting their hat in the ring to be candidate, but they're presently employed. You want to make sure you protect your confidentiality. You're going to have multiple types of interviews. Initial interviews, most likely there's some virtual process. We use Zoom. Other people use other type of things, team meets and everything else like that. So that's totally appropriate. You want to be asking members of your candidates the same questions over, the same question of each candidate, since how they're going to handle it. And you do want to allow them to have a chance to ask you questions. And more importantly, you want to have a chance to for follow-up. And last thing I'd say to you is that even if you're interviewing someone, regardless of what level of the organization, and you feel that reason that you don't think this person would work out, you want to make sure they leave on a very, very positive note, leave with a good impression. Don't ever say something negative about them, okay? So the last section here a little bit is about the onboarding process. Everybody taking a new job is going to have to learn the social, cultural, and professional adjustments to your organization. Everybody's different. So you want to make sure they understand the little nuances that's going to be there. You want to guide them in that process here. Again, who are the internal and external key stakeholders? Who are the people on the team they need to meet with? Board members, staff, donors. Who are the people that are the elected and appointed officials in the community that you want them to meet? Clearly, you want them to know, and you will do this to the interview process. What is the biggest strategic challenge and what the opportunity that they're facing, so they know that's what you want them to work on. They should know how they're going to be evaluated over the period of time. I make sure you need to do this in the first 30 days or 90 days or a year. How are you going to work there? If you are a CEO candidate, you want to be asking him, and you're the board chair, you want them to say, hey, do you want to meet every Friday morning for breakfast? Do you want to meet on a phone call? Do you want to meet on Zoom? You want to meet once a month? You don't want to meet at all? How do you want to meet? And last but not least, you want to make sure that there's an evaluation process. So these are very important process to have here. Okay, I'm going to summarize the 5 stages. You're going to do a strategic assessment of your organization to understand the challenges for that position, the challenge your organization is going in, and develop an ideal candidate profile. Highlight your organization's who you are and make it attractive. Number 2, this is where the challenge comes in candidate search is outreach. Do you have the internal resources to do a search? Do you have the resources from volunteers and internal people on your team to do the outreaching? That's going to be really important. That's why search firms exist. They do the outreach here. You go and have an interview process, screening people here. Can you screen them yourself? Do you have to have that here? That's going to be an important process here. You want to do the evaluation assessment tools. You got to do reference checking and all. And then last but not least, you got to make them an offer. You can make them an offer on your own. You can make an offer on the search committee. You can have your search firm make the offer and things like that. And last but not least, you're gonna have an onboarding process here. So that's kind of where we are. I thank you all very much for the opportunity to present to you. And everybody will receive a copy of this PowerPoint and presentation. Everybody will have a chance to download a copy of your book. I look forward to seeing you soon. And again, I'm also going to make it available for you a free consultation with me by emailing me at dennis@dcm-associates.com. Take a look at our website as well and contact me by phone if necessary. But I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. We look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.